At the top of many of the lists of why people choose to become entrepreneurs is the ability to pursue a passion, independence and autonomy, financial potential, the flexibility and work life balance that it may afford. Well, we'll have another conversation about the work life balance and the desire to make a difference. All of those are reasons I decided to launch a business. But there are three reasons that I have to say I enjoy the most. And what are those three? They are pursuing a passion, flexibility, and of course, financial potential. So, some of you are aware that I own a grant compliance consulting firm. And if you're wondering if grant compliance is my passion, I can say it is not. However, it is a skill, a knowledge base, and expertise I developed over the years. I do enjoy helping organizations navigate the complexities of regulations and guidance and all of these other things that impact their, sometimes multi-million dollar grants. But my true passion is, of course, travel. Not just travel, but travel and cultural immersion. I've been really intentional about integrating my passion into my entrepreneurial journey. And so far, I've been to 7 countries and visited two of them more than once over the 3.5 years that I've been in business. So during this episode, I'm going to share a bit about my experience in each country. That's what we're going to really get into during this episode of the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're going to talk about my solo and other travel adventures as an entrepreneur. And I'll just give you some insight into the way I've been able to merge the two to really try to live a no limit life. And of course, that's what we're promoting on this podcast. So stay tuned to the show, tell your friends about it, and of course, subscribe. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're going to start with my first trip. I started my grant consulting firm in January 2020. And by May 2021, I, like everyone else, was, over being stuck in the house and all of the things that the pandemic brought with it. And so I decided to test my ability to run my business, host meetings, and complete deliverables from a villa on a beautiful Caribbean island. So it was an island I'd wanted to visit for several years, and that island was St. Lucia. I chose it for several reasons. I'd wanted to climb Gros Piton, which I did, 2 hours up and 2 hours down. And of course, I wanted to stay at Hotel Chocolat, which is also known as Rabot Hotel. I was able to do that as well. I wanted to take a dip in the Sulphur Springs mud bath. I was able to do that while I was in St. Lucia. And I also wanted to visit the local market on a Saturday morning. I was also able to do that. And I was accompanied by the hotel chef and assistant chef. So for those of you who don't know, I have a dormant website called Sea Currents, seacurrents.com, seecurrents.com. It is dormant for now, but I would spend hours and then pay my children to also spend hours populating the website. It was a searchable website of fantastic things to do on islands around the world, places to stay, festivals such as book festivals, wine festivals, food festivals, literary festivals, marathons on islands around the world, museums, and just other things to explore on islands around the world. And so while we were populating the data about St. Lucia, I learned about some of the festivals. I learned about the pitons and about Derek Walcott, a St. Lucian who actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1992. So I really, really was interested in exploring St. Lucia. I'd been to, I believe, 2 or 3 other Caribbean islands. St. Lucia was on my list. So St. Lucia is a small island, about 27 miles long and 14 miles wide, and it's, north of the country of Venezuela. When I arrived, I stayed in Soufriere. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's on the southwestern side of the island. And it was there that I learned that working while vacation wasn't difficult. In fact, it was actually possible. So each morning, I enjoyed an amazing leisurely breakfast at the Rabat Robot restaurant. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it has a stunning view of Petit Piton. So there are two pitons on the island of St. Lucia. Gros Piton, the one with the wider base, and I believe it's not quite as tall. And then Petit Piton, which is much more narrower. And so I was able to see that every morning from my table, and it was just wonderful to be able to experience that on that particular on that particular property because it was surrounded by lush vegetation. Actually has several active farms. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. But after breakfast, I would worked on client deliverables just like I did if I was in my home office. I hosted meetings and I even signed a new client while I was there. So mission accomplished. I was able to learn that it is possible to work from anywhere. And that was the first of my work from anywhere adventure. The next opportunity to work from anywhere came in June 2022. Was it June? Yeah, June of 2022, when my younger daughter went to a study abroad program in Germany. The plan was that we would take her to Germany, get her settled, and then I, after she was settled, would stay in Europe and explore other destinations. But let's talk about what I did when I was in Germany and how I was able to integrate some of those activities with running my business from the country. So while in Germany, I did the same thing I did in St. Lucia. Germany is 6 hours ahead, though, of the east coast of the United States, at least at that time of the year. And so I had a 6 hour head start on work for clients. So by the time that they actually were getting their day started, I was able to complete items, complete deliverables, respond to emails, again, just as they were getting their day started. While in Germany, we made time to explore German wine country in of Mosul. We enjoyed live music, great food, and of course, great people watching at the Trier Old Town Festival. It was actually the first one they'd had since the pandemic, so that was just a fantastic festival. Just saw so much. I, of course, being a person that just loved culture and architecture, was admiring the buildings and just really taking in not just the larger buildings in I would call it downtown Trier, but just the residential homes and the characteristic German roofs. I'm not sure I'm not sure what that design style is, but you'll see it when I'll probably put a few up on the screen just so you see what I'm speaking of. So of course, after my daughter settled into her dorm, and we were able to just really also enjoy the town and areas around the town with our Airbnb host, who was fantastic. I think she's probably she and her husband, they're both German citizens. They're born and raised in Germany, but they were fantastic, and again, probably the best Airbnb host that we've ever had. They took us through Mosul and other nearby towns. They bought us Riesling, like several bottles of Riesling, small bottles and larger bottles. They bought us apple wine, and again, just fantastic guests. They had a beautiful, beautiful backyard and a small garden where their father, who the wife's father, stays and grows just a wonderful array of vegetables, and it was a beautiful, beautiful time to be in, I believe, the westernmost side of Germany. So again, and the great thing about that trip and every trip that I've gone on is that it solidified my belief. Actually, that trip did it more so than any others. It solidified my belief that we are truly more alike than we are different. So that was certainly one of the great takeaways from that trip. So after Germany, I went on a solo travel adventure to two other countries. So just, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Just go ahead and hit subscribe. So the next time that we release an episode, you'll be notified and you can certainly enjoy that. So the first of the two other countries was Barcelona, Spain. I stayed there for 8 days. Again, this is a solo trip. So during the days, I hosted meetings as I would again if I was working the states. I completed deliverables, interviewed. Actually, I was actually in the middle of interviewing candidates for a part-time executive assistant position. Actually, hired a recruiting firm who did the initial part of the interviewing. And while I was in Barcelona, I remember receiving the emails with the links to where I could watch their initial interviews and then decide who were going to be my top, 3 to 5 candidates for a second interview with me. So I do remember doing that in Barcelona. I also did a couple other things. I hired one of my longtime contractors, CMH and Company. She's fantastic. She does a lot of our website stuff. She does a lot of the back end. For a lot of our courses that we host. Again, the name of the company, CMH and Company. Her name is Christina. Hi, Christina. Christina Hooper. She's fantastic. Highly recommend her. So during meetings, of course, after the meetings, I was able, and after all the work, I was able to now explore as much as I can. So, top, I would say the top destination on my list was Sagrada Familia. You all can check that out. It is I believe they call it one of the wonders of the world. I don't, it's, I can't even begin to describe it. It's a very, very, very large structure. It's a church or a cathedral. And what's very interesting about it is that it was never complete. To this day, it's not complete. And they've had different architects and designers add certain sections to it. So what's really interesting is that you can see very, very, very different design styles throughout the building. So again, it's called La Sagrada Familia. I also went to Park Güell, which was again top on my list. I went to the Gaudi House Museum, which I believe is in the park in Park Güell. And then I went to Gaudi House, and that was also really fantastic. So when look up some of these destinations if you like. Really, really interesting. If you're um, what's the word? I don't know a lot about architecture and the different design styles and the different periods, but I know what I like. I know what is appealing to my eye and what I find very interesting. And so absolutely visiting those destinations appealed to my eye and to my interest and to my curiosity. And they were just fantastic. Again, I love to explore not just the destination, but the culture, expressions of the culture within that destination. Some of the other things that I did, between work or after work, was I walked along the Barceloneta Beach Boardwalk. I guess you would call it a boardwalk. Very, very long. A lot of restaurants. Enjoyed a fantastic lunch while I watched, people on the beach just, play soccer or just enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the sea breeze. I enjoyed some DJs during a festival on the beach. And of course, I learned my way around on their public transportation system. And based on what I was able to see, they really do seem to have a very, very good public transportation system in Barcelona. And so that was just a fantastic experience, visually, culturally. Did a lot of walking, really just, even the carved pavings, if I call it that. I wouldn't call it pavings, but on the street itself, the sidewalks are decorative. And so not all of them, but in certain areas it was just interesting to walk on these tiled sidewalks. So after leaving Barcelona, I headed to Portugal. I'd wanted to visit Portugal because I'm a fan of a famous YouTube family who actually moved to Portugal about 4 years ago. And I remember when they released their video showing their apartment in Lisbon. They've since left Lisbon and live in another part of Portugal. But that piqued my interest. And ever since I've said, okay, well, I'd like to check it out. So one of the things though I thought was really interesting, being here in the States and thinking about the cost to fly from state to state, was the unbelievably low prices to travel from country to country. So I think my price from my fare from Barcelona to Portugal, and it's not that far of a flight, was I believe it was certainly under $100, 100 euros. I think it was about 79 euros, and I was on, a pretty a long established airline. So just wanted to let you all know that that was something that I found pretty interesting. So at least back then, that was the cost. So I stayed in a fantastic Airbnb in an area in Lisbon called Belém, and I chose that area because it's a museum district, and it's also the home of, I believe, the Portuguese president, and just a lot of really nice, quaint eateries. And so and of course, because it had all of those assets, if you want to call them that, in that community, it's very safe, like most, a good a portion of Lisbon. So it was just really fantastic visually. It's also a town that is right next to I believe it's called the Tagus River. I don't remember the name of that river, but just a 2 block walk away from my Airbnb were at least 4 museums. I always cite my trip to Lisbon, Portugal, as the time I really, really learned the importance of avoiding mistakes with time zones. Because, and another mistake I made was booking meetings on the days that I was traveling. So I literally booked a meeting for the same day that I was traveling from Barcelona to Lisbon. And I won't do it again. Thankfully, I made the meeting on time, but did I have as much time to prepare? No, I did not. And that's because, of course, I certainly don't recommend that you book a flight on the same day that you have a meeting. Bad decision. So I didn't realize too that Lisbon was 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time. Again, at least that part of the time of the year. So Germany and Barcelona were on, I believe, the same time zone. Portugal is 1 hour less. So I had a meeting scheduled with a prospective client, by the way, and just 15 minutes after I'd arrived at the Airbnb was when the meeting was going to start. So I had just enough time to find the Wi-Fi, information and password, log in as quickly as I could, and had a meeting. It actually went very well, but and several months later, actually, that particular prospect turned to my firm to provide a grant related service. I ended up referring them to another firm that I thought was a better fit. But I guess the point I'm making here is that number one, don't do what I did. And number two, even when you're flustered and you're working also while traveling, you can, of course, pull it together, get the resources you need, and host successful meetings. And we can all do that now because we have the internet, we have working Wi Fi, and all of that technology is, of course, what makes this possible. So just as I did previously, I took advantage of the time zone difference for the remaining 7 days that I was in Portugal. I, provided whatever deliverables I needed to provide, responded to emails, hosted meetings. And then after was finished, I would close my laptop and then I would participate in walking tours. One fantastic walking tour that I recommend to anyone that visits Lisbon is the African History Tour. And that was where I learned about Portugal's not much discussed history as the most active European country in the transatlantic slave trade. If you ever watch that video where they show all the ships that went from the continent of Africa to the various destinations in the Caribbean in the Americas, and of course the South America, you see just how many ships were going to Brazil. And of course, we know that Portugal was the country that of course, transported many of the Africans from Africa to Brazil. That's, of course, why they speak Portuguese in Brazil. So let's not be surprised about any of that. I also was able to enjoy meals at local restaurants. One of my favorites was Miolo, and this was in 2022. Interestingly, when I went back this year in 2023 to Lisbon, I went back to Miolo, and one of the servers there recognized me, and she was just fantastic, very, very warm. There were times, 1 or 2 times when I arrived and it was a long line, she would kind of see me back there and she'd kind of give me that preferential treatment because we had great conversations, and she was just a fantastic server. And I, of course, was a fantastic guest or customer. So in August 2022, we're now leaving Portugal, and now 2 months later, I decided to travel to Mexico. This time, I didn't travel solo, and I'd actually hired an executive assistant by that time, and so we decided to stay in Playa del Carmen. And Playa del Carmen is a seaside, I guess we call it a seaside town, one of the beach towns. That's between Tulum and Cancun. It's a beautiful town, and it just really, I just had a really nice vibe. And I remember when we first arrived and we stayed at a fantastic resort. It just was nice to just leave the resort property, go for a really long walk. It's just, again, the vibe in del Carmen was just fantastic. Felt right at home. So while I was in Playa del Carmen, I now, of course, as I said, had a new executive assistant, my first executive assistant, in fact. That meant I was onboarding an employee. I was training her. I was delegating tasks and just getting used to that kind of give and take of that relationship, and building the foundation of what turned out to be a fantastic relationship. And of course, the team building. So while she and I were the only two employees of the company, we of course still worked with contractors. So there is still a team building element that is happening with both staff and of course external contractors. And I did all of this in between trips to one of the many cenotes in Yucatan, Mexico. I don't remember the name of the cenote, but it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. For those of you who are not aware, a cenote is a natural sinkhole that reveals underground water pools formed by limestone caves over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. If you want to look it up, it's Cenote. If you just want to look up Mexican cenotes, I believe there are thousands of them in the country. And cenotes are very, very popular tourist destinations. No matter, I would say, I'm not sure if it's throughout the country, but they are definitely very popular in the Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, in sort of those areas. I'm not sure about the Pacific side of Mexico. Um, I also was able to visit Chichen Itza. It's an amazing pyramid and site of other Mayan. It's a Mayan pyramid and also the site of other Mayan ruins, temples, a really, really large field. I would describe it as a football field, but it was much longer than a football field. It was certainly not for football. It was for a game that the Mayans played. And it was just an amazing experience, and just a lot of things on that property that I wish I'd had more time to explore. I also took a day trip to Isla Mujeres, and Isla Mujeres is an island off the coast of Cancun. Lots of restaurants, really, really popular beach, and so we enjoyed an evening in Isla Mujeres. So in January 2023, and I know I'm going from country to country pretty quickly because I want to make sure I make the most of my time and just share a little bit about the destinations I've had an opportunity to explore as an entrepreneur, and because I was an entrepreneur. So just wanted to, share my experience and hopefully inspire you. If you've always wanted to travel, you don't necessarily have to become an entrepreneur to do so. Just know that, I'm just sharing some examples of where I've been. And if you want to travel and you want to do so as an entrepreneur, my experience can certainly be one of the many experiences. We also have to remember that there are people who are digital nomads. They literally, that's what they do. They are, traveling in different parts of the world. They may live in Thailand for 3 months while they're working. They may live in Bali, Indonesia. They may live on a Caribbean island or a Hawaii, wherever it is that they want to live. And they are, basically being nomadic in their lives. And of course, they're doing it while they're working. So some of your colleagues could be digital nomads. So just wanted to make sure that what I'm doing, of course, is very, very it's nowhere near the mobility and nomadic lifestyle of digital nomads. And they're called to call that because of course they can work digitally. They can use this technology to do that. So in January 2023, we're now in another destination. I attended the Return on Investment Conference hosted by Hello 7 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And that was an amazing conference hosted by the company founded by Rachel Rogers. It was the first year that she hosted the conference. It was extremely inspirational, motivational, educational, informational. It was all the alls, right? It was just a great experience. So to go to the conference and to of course work while I was at the conference, and doing other things in Puerto Rico, I booked an Airbnb in Condado. And Condado is an oceanfront pedestrian friendly community that's known as San Juan's ritziest neighborhood. But I booked an Airbnb. Several of the conference attendees were staying at one or two or three of the hotels that were recommended. I like to do the Airbnb, and I'm sure you guys know why. Number one, it's a way to sort of embed yourself into the community. Number two, I like having a full kitchen. I eat a very specific diet because I have certain sensitivities. So I like to have a full kitchen. I like to go to the store. I like to first find the store, go to the store, and then find the eateries, the breakfast items, all of the things that I know that I want to eat. And it's also, again, another way to see the cost of food in the destination, the variety of food that's in the destination, some of the things that may be imported from the United States that may be familiar to me, some of the things that are very specific to that country. It's a great way for me to at least learn a little bit more about the taste, the a little bit about the cuisine of the destination. So was able to do that. And I want to point out that when I was in Puerto Rico, I was managing my grant compliance business and everything that involved. I was also hosting a cohort in the Ready Set Go Consult coaching program. I may have mentioned to you all before. Well, I know I have mentioned it before, that I host a coaching program for early stage consultants and early stage freelancers who want to learn what it takes to take their business to the next level. They've launched their business. They have maybe one client. Their delivery is still a little clunky. The way that they get leads is still hasn't been fully formed. They don't know how to properly, they haven't fully operationalized the business. And so we provide them with knowledge, with tools, with templates, with coaching to make sure that they can take their business to the next level, to really grow their business, and of course, even scale their business. And we do that using something called a framework we developed called the Catch framework. I say we, but it's me. It's the Catch framework, and we let them know what the Catch framework is once they join the program. So I was doing all of those things while I was in Puerto Rico, but of course, still found time to enjoy the country. I actually remember the stress of writing and delivering one of our most labor intensive services. It's a pretty detailed consulting report. It's, a 50 to 70 page report. And, it was a very intensive service, and we provided only in limited situations, but it's very well received by our clients. But I do remember having to deliver the final stages of that particular report for one of our clients. But while I was there, I was still able to enjoy local restaurants. That's part of the reason why I chose that particular that Airbnb, because it was surrounded by so many fantastic restaurants. I went to a local beach. We played in a lake next to a small park and just took a nap right in the grassy area. It was just a fantastic, calm, wonderful way to enjoy an afternoon. We went caving. It was the very first time I'd been caving. It was a 3 to 4 hour adventure. Fantastic experience. Wouldn't do it again. It included exploring caves once inhabited by the Tainos, which of course are the indigenous people of Puerto Rico. A great, fantastic experience. I hope you're seeing how with every destination, while I am, enjoying restaurants like everyone else does, I'm also trying to fit in an activity or two or five where I'm able to actually really observe or take in something about the terrain or about the landscape or about the culture, or museums, or a bookshop, whatever it is. I really try to make sure that that's a core part of the activities that either I do as a solo traveler, or when I travel with others. So I also enjoyed several strolls in Old San Juan, just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful historic town. Highly recommended. Beautiful pastel buildings, all the things you see in the pictures. And if you haven't looked at the pictures, go ahead and Google them. I enjoyed amazing gelato at Anita Gelato in Old San Juan. I just had to remind. I just had to say that one because it was fantastic, both the gelato and, of course, the gelato shop itself. Um, we did some salsa dancing in La Placita de Santurce. De Santurce. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And we both watched salsa dancing in the middle of the street. Right, it was just dancing in the middle of the street. And then we also went into one of the bars and was danced in there as well. We spent several hours in Loiza, and it's a seaside town in Puerto Rico where much of the where much of Puerto Rico's black culture is very, very evident, and in fact also celebrated. Something you don't hear much about. One of the reasons why Loiza and some of these destinations were top of mind for me goes back again to when I used to, um, you know, search and populate the Sea Currents database. That's when I learned about Loiza, when I learned about so many of these destinations, and I actually wrote several blog articles about them. So it's just amazing to be able to go and visit these places, to not just have them as a place I would like to visit one day, but have actually visited it. But I actually learned about it because I was willing to do the research, to find the information, and that became a reality for me. So it's just I'm just kind of actually, as I'm recording this episode, connecting the link between all the research I did to knowing, oh, there is this place in Puerto Rico called Loiza where you can go and enjoy Puerto Rico's black culture, more dominant black part of their black culture, because black culture is actually throughout Puerto Rico. We don't hear much about it, but it's throughout. The salsa, much of that, of course, is black culture. And then, of course, Jamaica is one of those destinations where I've been able to visit more than once and work while enjoying the destination. I've been to Jamaica on a number of types of trips. So I've been on a short 4-day trip where I didn't do much working because that was over the weekend and into the early part of the week. I've done a week long trip when I was a solo entrepreneur. I've even had a month long trip and it was when I actually had a team to support the firm's work. So I'm almost certain that having the team was part of the reason why I was able to stay there for a month and just keep everything going. And that was a fantastic experience. Lisbon is the second destination that I visited more than once, most recently in June of 2023. And as I'm speaking, you should be seeing some pictures as I'm speaking or a little after, with some of the places we were able to visit. So it was also an opportunity to see more of the country. I was a participant in a FIRE program. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I was in a program hosted by that same couple that actually moved to Portugal, who achieved FIRE and again moved to Portugal 3 to 4 years ago. We did stay in Lisbon, and I was able to again visit Miolo, in Belém, Miolo. I also went to Cascais. It's a coastal resort town with sandy beaches, marinas, restaurants, bars. Just a beautiful coastal town. It's a different energy from Lisbon. Clearly, it's a coastal town. And it was there in Cascais that I had to quickly find a co-working spot for a quick meeting. I had to have a meeting. So what do? I quickly Google co-working locations near me. I'm in Cascais, and of course the Googles, right? They know where I am, and then they recommend a couple of co-working spots. I was able to figure out which one had the better ratings. Looked at some of the other details. Quickly called an Uber to that co-working spot, hosted the meeting, and then went back to meet the person that I'd actually traveled to Cascais with. So just an example of how technology is allowing me to be able to, not just travel and work, but also travel and work and then adapt and find, other resources while I'm in this new country, and then be able to get back to enjoying the country. We also had dinner at the popular Punto Final restaurant in Almada. It's popular because you guys may remember that show No Reservations. I can't remember the host's name, but he was a beloved host, and unfortunately he passed away several years ago. But he'd gone to Punto Final, that he put that restaurant on the map, and as a result, it is a very, very popular restaurant in Lisbon. It's actually across from Lisbon in a town called Almada. And so we stood in line for 2 hours to get to Ponto Final, and the dinner was worth it. Okay, it really was worth the 2 hour wait. And actually, it's right by the water. It's just a fantastic location, and that's why it's of course called Ponto Final. We caught the ferry from Lisbon to Almada several times, and that the second time we were able to while I did that, of course, I hosted meetings, including sales meetings, while I was in an area called de Caparica, which I believe is a town in Almada. And several of these destinations, again, I really, really want to revisit and enjoy even more. But I do remember hosting, I believe, 4 meetings my final day in the Lisbon area, because of course we were in Costa Caparica, right by the beach. Many beaches, actually. I believe there are 12 beaches. I may be wrong. Don't quote me on the number. In Costa Caparica. So just wanted to share a little bit about my most recent experience in Portugal. Again, it is. I don't know if I will be going back to Portugal. Not likely, but there are, certainly other destinations that I have planned. Uh, but the fact is, again, I can work, travel and work from anywhere. And one of the reasons I started the business was to be able to do that. I want more time to explore the culture when I travel. I want more time to explore the food, the museums, and so much more. And I do want to point out that these trips likely would not have been possible if I didn't decide to become an entrepreneur who runs an online business. Of course, it's very different from an entrepreneur who decides to open up a cupcake shop. You can still do it, but you may have to close down the shop or hire someone to manage the shop while you're gone. But an online entrepreneur means that all I need is a laptop, stable Wi-Fi, and a well-managed calendar, right? So that's it. In order to do this well, you also need to have the flexibility to be available for clients while also the desire to explore the destination. So I enjoy interacting with clients and future clients, and so I make sure that we prioritize those meetings and we put them and we schedule them at a time that makes sense for the other things that I want to do while at the destination. I also have the independence to decide when and where to travel. As I mentioned in my episode when we talked about the empty nest and the full life, I no longer have to book any vacations around, when the school year starts or when the school year ends. I can book a trip in the middle of September if I wanted to. And that, again, is the independence that I absolutely enjoy. And this actually takes us back to the reasons I mentioned at the top of the show for why many people decide to become entrepreneurs: passion, flexibility, independence and autonomy, and of course, financial potential. So, some of you may be wondering, where am I going next? Well, I do plan on visiting several African countries. I do plan on, of course, making it to Southeast Asia and to South America. Um, so, the travels will continue. I also want to point out that I have a blog where I share my lessons learned while working from anywhere. And there were certainly some lessons. One of them I did share earlier, and that was around making sure that you're really, really, um, um, you know, paying very close attention to the time zone differences, and just making sure that you're not missing meetings or showing up late for meetings. But all of those lessons learned are on the Ready Set Go Consult website on the blog page. It's readysetgoconsult.com. And if you're interested in becoming a freelancer or a consultant, I also have a free downloadable ebook and even a masterclass you can watch. You can watch it while you're washing dishes or doing some other work around the house. So just know that that information is there if you ever decide that you wanted to actually explore entrepreneurship as a part of your life redesign. So this is where I leave you with a quote, and this time it's about travel, not necessarily about aging, because travel is something that we can all enjoy no matter our age. And this quote is from Ray Bradbury. Yes, that Ray Bradbury, the author of the uber popular Fahrenheit 451. I've actually read it, and so definitely pick that up if you'd like. And here is the quote, and I really, really enjoy this one. Half of the fun of the travel is the aesthetic of lostness. And, and that is half of the fun. When we were going from Lisbon to Almada, or to different parts of Puerto Rico, or different parts of Jamaica, or different areas in St. Lucia. It was about the aesthetic of lostness, right? I didn't know where I was, but that in and of itself is exciting because there's so much to see. It's almost like being a child. One of the things I always say is that one of the things about being a child is that you're still amazed at so many things that are happening. So, of course, I couldn't agree with that quote more. With that, I'll end this episode, but not before I ask you to subscribe to the podcast, share it with your friends and family. Until the next episode, remember, age has no limit.